Welcome to Noble Bereans with your weekly dose of motivation and inspiration for Christian living. I'm your host, Steve Sanders, and today we're going to be reading from 2 Timothy chapter 2, beginning in verse 22, if you'd like to go ahead and turn there. Before we get there, I'll give a little background, though. This past week, I was at a secular conference. It was a work-related conference, and ended up having a couple of really good conversations with some brothers in the Lord, and those conversations really led me to this passage being our passage of the week. Just so happened that I read this passage within a day or so of meeting with these gentlemen. Now, I think we all three, we challenged each other. We talked about our successes. We talked about our struggles. And I think we all walked away feeling better equipped to serve the Lord. And of course, that's a success story anytime you're with believers. So let's go to 2 Timothy 2, beginning in verse 22. Now, flee from youthful lusts and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. But refuse foolish and ignorant speculations, knowing that they produce quarrels. And the Lord's slave must not be quarrelsome, but be kind to all, able to teach, patient when wronged, with gentleness correcting those who are in opposition, if perhaps God may give them repentance, leading to the full knowledge of the truth. And they may come to their senses and escape from the snare of the devil, having been held captive by him to do his will. So the first time I ran into these gentlemen this past week, we actually ended up having a non-believer join our circle as we were talking. And it ended up turning into a faith-based debate, really from his perspective, not ours. We tried to answer his questions with love and kindness, but he was intent on really creating a divisive atmosphere. So we ended up, thankfully, able to end that conversation, but we all three, I think, agreed that we may have planted some seeds with him that eventually may turn his life to the Lord. So that's really the first lesson. We treated him with kindness and love. We didn't get into an intense debate with yelling or arguing or anything like that really wouldn't produce fruit. We then later had a conversation together where we spent some really quality time together talking about our own struggles in the Lord, our own faith-building things we're doing, our growth in the Lord, and what we're doing in our lives. And I think we all three walked away from that conversation feeling emboldened, feeling better about where we're at in our walk with God, and actually maybe even having had some good correction to things that we were doing that needed some good challenge. So anyway, the whole conversation with these gentlemen was great. So there's a few takeaways. Number one, find a brother or sister in the Lord to spend time with, and use that as an opportunity to talk about what you're doing with the Lord. Rather than spending time talking about worldly things, talk about what you're doing in the Lord. Second, when you encounter someone who is not a Christian, use that opportunity through faith and love to share the gospel with them through kindness. But don't get into a quarrel with them, because that doesn't win them over. And frankly, on the topic of quarrels, be careful that you're not talking about things amongst yourselves, amongst believers, that aren't really adding value to the gospel, but are really only sowing a divide and argumentation among believers. Because I think that's not really a great example of what we ought to be while we're reflecting the Lord. So use this passage this week as you go out into your life. Again, look for people to interact with, look for people to help grow your faith, and be that person for other people as well. And you'll find that it makes your week so much better, just as it did for mine. All right, we'll be back again next week. For now, go out there and make it a great day.